One of the biggest draws here for native English speakers is you don't have to learn a new language, but is that creature comfort offset by something like budget, let's say? I'm Kalie with Expats Everywhere. We're in England. Let's take a look.
Okay. We know that creating a country guide about England is hard. There are so many cities to cover, not including the special things of each region, the difference in accents and the weather and so on. So before you get into the comment section to tell us we've missed something, just know that we're only going to give you a little taste of England and our opinion.
But that taste is going to be packed with city info, transportation, food, and what you need to know about England. So let's go.
Let's go. England has around 58 million people, with the biggest cities by population being London, Manchester, and Birmingham. But the capital, London, by far has the highest population. More on London in a minute.
England is divided into 9 regions.
Of course, it's then divided up into smaller unitary authorities who have control of the local area.
These 9 regions are made up of a number of counties and districts, with the civil parish being the most local unit of government.
When thinking about where to live, you have a variety of options, whether you want to live in a city or somewhere more remote with land.
For those of us who are native English speakers, assimilating is much easier as English is the primary language, but they also have a variety of other languages spoken here.
Let's take a look at some of the largest cities of England, starting with London.
London is, of course, the capital of England and has a population of around 9 million people. It's considered to be one of the oldest great cities with a rich history.
The city is located in the southeast part of the country along the River Thames. It's not uncommon to get rain in London at any time of the year, but more in the winter months. You might also get some snow then too.
The average temperatures range from the 40s and 50s in the winters, and the summers don't necessarily get hot. It does get into the 70s, but summer lows can still be in the 50s. So if you prefer cooler weather but not necessarily frigid and snow, then London might be the place for you.
Did you know that the London Underground, or of course commonly known as the Tube, is the oldest subway in the world?
The Tube was opened in 1863, but for locomotive trains, and then in 1890 it began operating electric trains.
London is sprawling with a variety of different neighborhoods to live in. You could choose to not have a car and use public transportation, and this goes for in London, but also getting out of London as well.
Since it's the capital, we'll break down a few neighborhood categories. If you're looking for a couple of upscale neighborhoods, then check out Knightsbridge, Regent's Park, and Kensington, just to name a few.
For a location that's known to be family friendly, you have Ealing, Islington, and Richmond. And some neighborhoods known to be a little more affordable are Leighton, Catford, and Hounslow.
This is just to give you a few options for the capital though.
All right, let's head a little further north from London to take a look at another big city that is more in the center of the country, Birmingham. Birmingham is northwest of London and offers a variety of green spaces and canals. It's actually considered one of the greenest cities in Europe.
It has an industrial heritage, but currently has a thriving jewelry quarter and is one of the biggest jewelry producers in the UK. Birmingham also has one of the largest public libraries in the world.
Interesting. The city is known to be an economic powerhouse, so if you're looking for a job in finance, technology, or even manufacturing, this might be the city for you. If you move with a company, they will sponsor your visa.
There are also several universities here, so you could get a student visa and study in Birmingham.
Birmingham gets plenty of rain like London, but temperatures are colder in the winter and not as warm in the summer. You will catch some snow here in the winter.
So expect cold temperatures in the winter, like a range of 30s to 40s, and the summers generally being in the 50s and 60s.
Let's check out one more larger city around England. For this, we'll move a little further north to the city of Manchester.
Manchester is north of Birmingham as you creep towards the English and Scottish border, but it's still not that close to the border. However, we're moving further north, so you can guess what that means for the weather. Let's start there.
I bet it means cold. So the weather is actually comparable to Birmingham, even though it's even further north. It seems like they're both battling each other in terms of like rain, so expect rainy days in Manchester too.
The winters are cold though, and you will get snow. Expect to be in the 30s and 40s, and in the summers to be in the 50s and 60s. This is a city that doesn't really get hot, so if you want to escape heat, then consider Manchester.
Manchester is filled with creativity. The music scene is very important here. Some might say that Manchester is industrial, and while parts of it do have that look, there's no surprise because this is where the Industrial Revolution began.
While they've kept the architecture, they've woven this history into their city, so now these buildings are homes, restaurants, shops, and more. They have plenty of museums to enjoy as well.
Don't forget to spot the worker bee all around the city, as it's a symbol for the people of Manchester.
Now, of course, there are several great cities around England, from big to small. We just highlighted the big ones, but if you're looking for smaller towns, then you sure do have a variety.
For example, many expats are gravitating to places like Liverpool, Bristol, Leeds, and Sheffield. And like Kalie said, you have a lot of options. Some of these smaller cities are desirable for work, some for the cultural richness, and others more for a quiet and slow-paced lifestyle.
England has a good train and bus system, but you might just want a car if you're planning on being in a smaller town. Just remember to note what side of the road they drive on.
Well, we can't talk about England and not mention football. For those Americans out there, I'm referring to soccer, but American football actually has made its way to England as well. However, football is more than just a passion here. For some people, it's their life. So if you move here, embrace the culture.
England's cultural diversity means they don't really have a national dish, but some people find the cuisine hard here. A few national favorites are beef, a Sunday roast, fingers and mash, and fish and chips. Notice it's a little meat heavy. Again, because of their cultural diversity, something like chicken tikka masala also has become a common dish.
The cost of living will vary depending on location and lifestyle. A single person should budget around 900 British pounds without rent. Rent could range anywhere from 700 to 1,500 pounds depending on where you live. It could be a little cheaper in the more rural areas and obviously more expensive in a place like London.
There are cheaper meals to find for around 10 to 15 pounds per person, but you can of course find very high-end restaurants as well. A liter of milk in a store is around $1.50 and a kg of apples is around 2 pounds.
There are a variety of visa types available from studying to working, but they might not always be the easiest to obtain. You'll need to check requirements to see if you qualify. There are also different requirements and benefits that each offer. Unfortunately, England doesn't offer a standard retiree visa.
England has their National Health System, or NHS, which is a publicly funded healthcare system, and it's primarily funded by taxes. So that means it's generally free when you go visit a doctor. UK residents have access to this, but you might have to pay an immigration health surcharge when you apply for your visa to access NHS.
We're a family of 3 and we love London, but we know it's just the capital and there's more to England. We have visited a lot of places, so would we live here?
All right, I've got a real soft spot for England, so I'm looking forward to getting into this, but just to let you know, we have traveled, I don't want to say like all over England, but we've visited a wide variety of cities. I think we're up to a dozen now. We haven't just been to the major cities, so let's chat a little about our impressions of each city that we've been to, and then some of the other kind of nuances to what life might be like there before rounding it out and saying if we'd actually live in England.
Well, I think that there is something familiar about England, obviously because cultural similarities that we have. Language is one thing, but just the way that we do things is very similar. So I think that that's comforting. It makes it easier as an expat to move there as opposed to moving somewhere that is so culturally different that you would experience a culture shock. I don't think you really get a culture shock in England.
No, I think one of the things that has caught me out on several occasions while in England, and it depends, I think, a little bit on where we are, is the friendliness level of people. And obviously friendliness will vary depending on like person to person. But in terms of like the culture of different places, some places are friendlier than others, right?
Yeah.
And I would equate, and this is like a rough equation, but I would equate London and New York City to the people to have similar mentalities.
Yeah,
you know?
Go, 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 I'm here for work, I'm here to do this, there's a lot of people, there's a lot of traffic, you're a lot more focused on what you're doing rather than what's going on around you. Compared to a smaller place in the US, you have slower pace of life, people seem to be a little friendlier, you know?
Well, yeah, I mean, like the part of the US that I'm from, people are quite friendly in terms of like pleasantries as you're passing by, saying good morning, good evening, whatever, just hello. And when I've done that in the UK, because I feel confident doing that in England because it's English.
Yeah.
And I'll say like hello or good morning. Sometimes I just get like a side eye, like, what's this?
Yeah.
You know, what's this person talking about? Why are they talking to me? Do I know them?
Yeah, but I do think that that's more in a place like London or Manchester, maybe a bigger city, as opposed to, I don't know, when we visited Southampton,
yeah.
Bristol, maybe, okay, now these aren't like necessarily small little rural places, but they are smaller, so you have a different feel of the city, but then a different feel of the people too, so a little friendlier in that sense.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so looking at the different cities we've visited, we've been to London copious amounts of time. We've had it be no secret that we are Arsenal fans. So if you're not an Arsenal fan and you get in the comment section, I'll just leave it alone. But if you're a Gunners fan, let us know. No, so, you know, we've been to London a bunch. That in and of itself is kind of its own question about like livability and would you want to live there? Because you have to balance like lifestyle, price, and those
budget.
things.
Yeah.
But then places like Liverpool, for example. We visited Liverpool. Liverpool to me felt very much like a young man's game.
Because the
Like,
music scene and the culture and the arts there, like
Yeah.
that,
Yeah, I think so.
and the bars and everything. Yeah.
I think so. It felt like a very, very lively place, like a very kind of university scene
Yeah.
altogether. I could have that impression a bit wrong because when we visited, we were in our 20s.
We were younger, yeah.
So that's a bit different.
But
yeah.
so for us, it was great, right? We did
Amazing.
enjoy that side of
Amazing.
it. So it doesn't necessarily mean that that's the only side of Liverpool, but you do have that as an aspect if that's what you're looking for, that
Yeah.
liveliness.
Yeah, and then a place outside of Liverpool is a place like Chester, which is a walled city or walled town. I
Yeah.
don't know if it's considered city or town population-wise, but it has a more quaint, slower paced life, still has tourism going on because it is a very historic city, rich in culture and heritage. And then, you know, you could move to a place like Bristol, which has, we felt like a good mix,
Yeah,
right?
good mix. That's a good way of putting it, like a good mix. But I would say someplace like Chester, there's so much history in the whole country that if you're looking for something that is slower paced, then you could live in a really cool town that has a lot of history that I think you wouldn't get bored of it. You'd just be like, it'd be really cool to be living near something like that. So where you have London, which obviously has a lot of history too, it's a big city built up like a big city. So you could just feel like you're living in a big city. If you wanted something a bit more historical, you've got lots of options, different ranges of sizes too, that you could be living in around this historical stuff, which is cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And earlier in the video, we talked about living on the outskirts of London, and we actually visited a friend who was house sitting for a couple that had a kind of a large house with, you know, with a big yard, and you would definitely need a car there.
Yes.
I mean, okay, you could survive with the buses, but
You would need a car.
everybody had a car. Like everybody had a
a
driveway.
neighborhood,
It looked
yeah,
like a neighborhood you'd find in the U.S.
Yeah.
Straight up.
And this was like a massive house with a pool and a jacuzzi and a couple stories and stuff. So you have that as an option as well. But you would definitely need a car.
And
Something like that.
yeah, and being outside of London, but being like 45 minutes away, I think, depending on lifestyle, you could have the best of both worlds. You could have a taste of the city on the weekends or like go in for a play or whatever during the week, but then live on the outside of the hustle and bustle.
That's true.
Obviously, depending on where you're going to work as well, because some people like to work very close to or live very close to where they work.
Yeah.
I totally understand that as well. I don't like large
Others
cities.
are okay with, commuting, right? So if you live on the outside, because this isn't that far. I mean, it was kind of close to where Gatwick is, so in the south part.
Exactly.
So you're close to that airport too, because that's the other thing about London, at least, is like there are a lot of airports, but some of them are kind of far out. You know, you have to take a maybe 45-minute to hour train, depending on where you are in London, to get to the airports.
Yeah.
Okay, but that's specifically London. One thing I do want to come back to, well, two things actually. I think I want to talk about the weather in England
Right.
overall, and then the food.
Okay.
So weather first. Thoughts on the weather?
Okay, so we live in Portugal right now, and a lot of people will bring up that statistically Porto has like more rain, maybe it is, than London. And I mean, London being a part of England, so
Yeah.
there, just saying that. This isn't like a city guide, but I don't have that from the wide variety of times we've been to London throughout the year.
Yeah,
Like
all
you know what I
different
mean?
seasons.
All different seasons.
Mhm.
We've certainly hit more rainy days than not, or more gray days
Gray
than
days.
not.
I think that's probably as well something you have to gauge is, okay, maybe rain. Is it like that actual water precipitation
Yeah.
that's the difference? Okay, that's one thing, but like days of gray is something else. And then you get a lot more days of gray, I think, in England in general.
Yeah.
And snow. I mean, in Porto, we don't get snow, but you get, I mean, we've been stuck in snow in London, and that's further south. So
Yeah.
obviously imagine as you go further north.
The rail tracks iced over, and then, it was a pain.
Yeah.
So in that regard, I think I could survive that coldness, that wetness, that grayness. but it could be one of those places where we move to, and after a year, 2 years, you're just like, done, can't do this anymore.
Yeah, I don't know about the weather. I think it would be hard. Maybe I could do it. There are other factors to consider as far as like, you know, our cost of living and budget and everything. So if that was comfortable, then I think I could do the weather.
Yeah.
But one other thing is the food.
Yeah, so food-wise, it's really funny because as Americans, I think stereotypically we hear about British cuisine being awful. And I think a lot of Brits find American cuisine to be awful. But I think what gets lost is the fact that certainly in the larger cities, you have a wide variety of food.
Oh, you can eat anything.
And you can eat anything.
Yeah, any cuisine in any of the big cities.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't have to worry about that. So you don't necessarily need to be eating British food.
British food.
Yeah, like the Sunday roast, like I mentioned, or like the traditional breakfast, an English breakfast. You know, you might not like that, but you don't necessarily have to be exposed to it all the time.
Yeah.
If you're in a more rural area, then you are going to be. And I think that's going to be the thing that's more meat heavy. Like some of those traditional dishes, they like the pies and everything, which, you know, so there's a lot of meat.
Yeah, cuisine-wise, I find England to have a wide variety, at least in the cities. Like if you get into the towns and your local pub is what it is, it's gonna have more British fare.
Yeah.
But I actually like it. I like fish and chips. I think they do a good burger.
Yeah, that's true. It could get old, I guess, after a while. But mentioning that local pub, that is fun if you're in a smaller area and you have like your local pub, like the culture of that, the fun atmosphere, the community that it builds.
Yeah.
That's a fun thing to have. There's something about that makes you feel settled in where you are. So as an expat, when you move and you have that type of community or that type of, I know this person, I know this place, you feel settled. There's something nice about that.
Yeah. I think we could go on for days
about England. There's a lot to unpack.
But let's jump into the section that we like to call "Would You Expat That?" And basically, I'm asking Kalie, would you want to live in England for let's say a couple years, year to 5 years? Would you want to expat that?
I would say yes. I think this is an easy one. There's a lot that's comfortable about it. Obviously, the language, the culture similarities that we have. Things that I like about England. I would say it probably would be a bigger city because I wouldn't want to drive necessarily, or, you know, Josh and I don't like being out in rural land areas, so we don't need that. So I think I would expat England, but it would be in one of the larger cities. And you?
No hesitation. If England would accept me, I would definitely want to try it on.
Yeah. For
sure. I don't know if it would be a long-term thing beyond what we would consider like expating a city or a country, but I would like to try it on, like London would be great if we could afford it. We can't afford it right now.
Depending on how we live there, I guess.
Manchester was a city that we visited a year and a half ago, whatever it was, and we had an awesome time.
Yeah, we
really enjoyed Manchester.
A lot of our British friends were like, "Why are you going to Manchester?" We're like, "Well, we want to check it out." So I don't know, don't write it off. It's pretty good, yeah.
Absolutely, don't write it off. And if you want to check out Manchester, click on this video right here, because we have a city guide that might help you out. Now, let's get moving. Bye.
Bye.